G'day hockey fans, welcome back to iceHQ here in Reservoir, Melbourne, Australia, home of CCM Australia and the Pro Summer League. I'm going to be joined momentarily with my commentary partner, Carl Brewer, to go over the team list following the draft. But before we get that, we're going to talk about the Inferno, and we're going to cut to our on-ice reporter who sat down with Steve Bellick and see what he thinks his team's going to perform following the draft. Let's get down to you guys and hear what you had to say. Alrighty, Stevie, the man on fire. A lot's been said about your ascendancy to the captaincy here for the Inferno this season. Last year, you were taken, like you said, a little bit late in the draft. This is your first draft here for the Pro Summer League. How do you feel about it?
I feel it went pretty well. We pretty much got every player we wanted to get throughout the draft. Maybe 2 or 3 got picked just before us, but all in all, we got every player we wanted, and we filled every spot we wanted to fill.
Oh, that sounds great. So you said you got every player that you wanted. So this season was a little bit interesting, right? You got to look at your roster from last year. You got to protect 6, and then based on that, you got to build your strategy. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you decided to make those protected players selected?
So just really based on how their performance went last year, I feel that we're pretty obvious. Protecting Seb, very obvious choice, great goaltender, solid. Got to protect him. BMAC as well, put a lot of points up. Tough choices to make towards the end, and when you come down to last pick, I think we got Austin. We just decided to select Austin right at the last minute. Great locker room guy, got a lot of points, and definitely a big part of our team. So we want to select him as well.
That sounds great. And we've asked all the captains this, and I know everybody thinks their team's perfect, right? But I want to know from your own mouth, who do you think was the best steal that you got tonight?
It's a tough one, but I'd probably say it's a tough one between either Dusty or maybe even Drakey. I was surprised Drakey went so late. He's a great player, can play every position, and he's a great guy to have in the locker room.
Sounds like you guys are going to be having a lot of fun in the room. So lastly, in terms of performance, everybody wants to win. What do you see as success for your team this season?
I'll be surprised if we lose a game. I think we could go through without even losing a single game this year.
Sounds great, man. We're going to see some patented big hits on the blue line from yourself?
I'm going to give it my best, yeah.
Alrighty, Stevie. So the man on fire, Bo Inferno, going undefeated. We're going to have a lot of undefeated teams this season, guys, and can't wait to see you all in January. Thanks, Steve.
All right, thank you.
Well, there you have it, Steve Bellick. I don't think anyone had more fun than Steve here on draft night. He had his iPad out. He was doing all his work. He told me he put a lot of work into to really know who he wanted to pick for the draft. They were lucky. They finished last season, right? So they had the first overall pick of the draft, and they went and picked up Dean Klomp. Now, Dean Klomp, from the research that Steve did, you look into it, he's from St. Mary's, Ontario, great city, played for the University of Toronto for 5 years. And when he played, junior hockey there in Lindsay, he was over a point per game player. So it's going to be interesting to see him come over, play on the ice here. You can never go wrong with drafting a Canadian, right? but really excited to see Dean join this Inferno team.
I think one of the most fascinating things that we've seen throughout the whole draft process is the upping of the ante and the skill level of the team managers themselves. I mean, you look at what happened with the Dogs last season, going undefeated basically with Jamie Burke. Did his homework, and everyone else might have been just a little bit casual about it, but Jamie really knuckled down, did a whole heap of work on it, studied the players' form, and I think Steve Bellick is doing the same sorts of thing. Those two guys, they're great mates, but they're also great rivals, and they've both competed very, very hard against each other. They coach the junior teams here. We're also fierce competition, and we're seeing that fierce competition in the door. And that pick up of Klomp, and we're all like, who is this guy? Hang on a sec, we're going to go and look him up. And yet Steve's found him, and that's his number 1 draft pick, and I think that's a magnificent choice. The other thing to not forget about Steve Bellick is he's also one of the best defensemen in the country. He's another one of those guys. He doesn't score a lot of goals. By golly, when he's on the ice, not many people do. He was one of the players last season who could shut down the Vajazov and Jamie Burke combination. He was one of the few who actually successfully managed to do that fairly on. He's got that vision and he sees the game. So Steve Bellick, wearing two pairs of shoes this time, not only fantastic defenseman, but also this time leading the team and picking the team. I think he's made a huge difference to a team which last season really struggled.
Yeah, he's a great leader, obviously, coming in, the man on fire, captain of the Inferno, right? But he's also buoyed by the captain from last season. Unlike the Bruins, where Tommy Powell's, retired from the Pro Summer League, we have Brendan McDowell joining in and helping out Steve there. So we still have that experience there. And when you look at the protected list, right, you mentioned, Bellick mentioned in the chat, they've got Seb Woodlands, right? And Seb arguably last season, one of the star goaltenders of the Pro League, right? And they've also got Jackson Lane, another guy can skate really well up and down. They also picked up Austin McKenzie in that in the protected list. Now
they did struggle a lot last season with a short bench too. So hopefully, if they can get that a bit more under control, there was a number of times when they were really struggling in the third period because they were just running out of legs. I think with Steve there to provide a bit more momentum and a bit more impetus, and just provide that team with a bit more gel, for lack of a better. That's going to make a big difference for the while. And I think what we're going to see is across the board, all 4 teams are improved on last season. This, I think, will be a team that's going to go up a lot further.
Well, I spoke to Steve recently, and he was saying, the big thing is just having fun in the room, all getting on the same page, and improving, week on week. Now, speaking of guys that I saw improve last season, Hector Fronek, the flying Frenchman, like we call him in the PHL for the Ducks. We saw him play in the Pro League last year, and he was great. But then when he moved over that next season with the Ducks, I thought he was one of the Ducks' best players there in the Pacific League. So I'm interested to see him now come back and support Steve and Brendan this season.
I think there was a lot of contrast in the way Hector played in the Pro League, where he didn't look all that effective for when he was playing last season, because he was doing too much carrying the puck on his own, a lot like Sajasov has a tendency to do. Unless they've got that player to pass to, that structure around them, if that happens, he comes out of his shell and becomes a much more effective player. And I think Steve will know that, and he's going to try and structure lines around Hector which allow him to utilise his talents more. So instead of trying to go coast to coast and getting dispossessed and herded into the corners, he's going to be able to use his passing ability, and I think he'll be much more dangerous in this more balanced Inferno team this time.
For sure, and joining those 6 players that were protected, right? They got a couple other guys that have come back, right? Kevin Dow, they're playing on the wing. He's come back to play for the Inferno. They've got Matthew Knox as well, who likes to get out there, and he can play both center or the wing there. Jack McCoy on D, who again, I think last season we saw him paired quite a bit with Steve Bellick, as probably one of the better shutdown defensive lines out there. And the ever-present Alex Rose as well, who I think we saw jump up in the rush and really lead the play quite a bit last season.
That's the thing that they're going to need to improve on the most. They've got Hector, so they've got that real potent defensive weapon. They've got Steve Bellick to tie their defence down. If they can make that defensive structure work better this season, and again make sure they've got full rotations and they're a bit fresher in that third period, then they will be a much greater contender than they were last season. I'm looking for some big improvements.
For sure. Backing up Seb, coming from the Bruins, is Brian McKenzie, who as well has been a very great goalie, one of the better blokes here in Australia. I know I'm quite friendly with him as well, great guy. He was really great for the Bruins, and when we saw him play for the Bruins last season, he was paired up with Leatham, and Leatham and Brian did very well. They split most of the games. Probably part of the reason why they were able to get into that second spot. Unfortunately, losing to the Snipers. But this is going to give a really great tandem. Seb and Brian, you can trust both of them there on the ice, and they'll really battle it out to see who's going to start on day one. The biggest steal, when you look at the question with Bellick, right? He asked who he thought the best steal was, and I think he mentioned Chris Drake, right? One of the guys coming over from the Ducks, and I know you have a couple points on him, right?
Yeah, I think Chris Drake is another one of those players, a lot like Glenn Webster, who can just kind of do everything and bring that presence. But he also brings a lot of maturity. He's been around a lot. We talk a lot about bandying the word maturity around as if it's got some sort of magical meaning to it. What it really means is just trying to do everything you do well, like Michael McMahon, who's got that maturity as a defensive player. Drake has that maturity as a forward, and what he does is not only will he himself do his job, but the players around him pick that up from him as well, and he provides that real focus point for that team on whatever line he's on. He's a pleasure to watch, but he's a really good hard worker, and I think he's an inspirational leader purely through his work ethic. Oh,
no doubt. They brought some good experience in. They got Lee Turner coming into the team as well. Great guy in the room, great on the ice as well. Logan Ewell, another Canadian, bringing into the mix. Looking like the Canadian accent might be a little bit more prevalent in that team between him and Dean, right? We'll have to send them a bottle of maple syrup, right? Only from Quebec, right? But as you mentioned, great team. They've got a couple other young players coming into it. Jesse Thompson, really good last season, played really well. I know his grand as well always would come out to the games. She cheer on Jessie, lovely lady as well. So we'll be looking forward to welcoming her back. And this is another team that brought in one of the players from the JSL, right? So they brought in Kato Narus there from the Inferno, and Steve knows him quite well through coaching and working with that development league. So obviously seen something there in the youth. hoping that he can bring up that level into the Pro League, and looking forward to seeing Kai out there for the Pro Summer League.
Well, that's one of the great things about the Pro League too that we've got here, is it does actually feed players up from the junior leagues that have been played here at iceHQ. So you've got, not only have you got Steve Bellick's involved in coaching the juniors, but also Jamie Burke, and so they're finding and identifying those young kids with talent and giving them this pathway and bringing them in and pairing them up with players like, for example, imagine a kid coming along just straight out of junior A, whatever it is, and all of a sudden he's playing on the line with Chris Drake. I mean, what an incredible experience where they've got an opportunity for him to develop and learn. And those guys are going to flourish throughout the season, and with that leadership and learning that maturity from those more experienced players. And it's going to, this could be a really exciting team. Come along and watch. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, super excited. I mean, you heard Steve, right? He mentioned he'd be surprised if they lost. So I wonder if he'll be heading over to Bunnings or something and buying a fire starter pack and lighting that team on fire. But I know he's super excited, super passionate. They've got a great list, buoyed by some of those pickups that they have, along with some of the guys that they knew performed extremely well last season. Let's just hope they all show up and they get out there. And I know in January, it's going to be a great season seeing these guys.
It's funny you say that the camaraderie and it's great in the change room during the game. I'll tell you what's even better than what happens in the rooms before the game is if you win in the games in the rooms after the game. And that's what these guys have been looking for. It's like, yeah, we get on really well before the game, but I would love to, after the game, be saying, yeah.
Look, I think we all realized when COVID hit Melbourne, right, and there were different rules and regulations, we all found out that we really could get dressed in 15 minutes if we needed to, right? But I always said the best part of hockey is the hour before and the hour after in the rooms with your mates, going to battle. That's what makes this sport the best, and why I'm always here so early for my games. But no, really looking forward to seeing the Pro League getting back up. I'm looking forward to being in the Commentators booth with you, Carl, and can't wait to see which one of these teams is going to lose, because apparently they're all going undefeated.
Yes, this team will never lose again.
We'll see you guys all in January, and look forward to seeing your comments on in the chats. See you soon.